I'm Pearl. Standing here, behind the counter of my very own cafe, I watch Jacob chatting with guests, and I can't help but reflect on the journey that led me here. It was in this very place that I witnessed a spectacular downfall, a man crumbling under the weight of his own greed and ambition. It all started when Brian, my ex-husband, saw me alive and well in the park. He couldn't believe his eyes. I was supposed to be dead, a terminal case according to the initial diagnosis. But there I was, feeding ducks with Jacob and a lively puppy by my side, looking healthier and happier than he'd ever seen me. That moment was a turning point, not just for him, but for all of us. Brian's mind, always calculating, immediately jumped to the conclusion that I must have money. The diagnosis he'd researched promised no survivors without a fortune, so he assumed I had access to funds. His fixation on this idea was like a cancer itself, consuming him and driving him to make desperate moves. Allison, his new partner, noticed the change in him right away. She'd always been shrewd, gathering evidence of his off-book dealings over time. When she learned she was pregnant, Brian's reaction was cold and calculating. He saw her pregnancy as an inconvenience, a threat to his career. He suggested termination as if it were a simple matter of scheduling. Allison refused, and from that moment on, their relationship began to crumble. As Allison's pregnancy developed complications, Brian's true colors showed. He was absent, irritable, and dismissive. When she went into premature labor, he didn't even show up at the hospital. Alone, Allison endured the pain and fear, and in that moment, she finally saw Brian for who he really was. While all this was happening, I was busy rebuilding my life. After the misdiagnosis of cancer, I'd lost everything: my job at the bakery, my apartment, and my marriage. Brian had ensured that, telling my employer I was terminally ill and having my belongings removed. But I refused to let it break me. I started with short walks, learning to listen to my body again. One afternoon in the park, I heard a puppy yelping. A man named Jacob was struggling to free it from the bushes. We worked together instinctively, and in that moment, a new chapter of my life began. Jacob was gentle, kind, and genuinely interested in me and my baking. He asked me to cook for his startup team, and I agreed. Cooking for the team was more than just a job. It was a chance to use the skills I'd learned from Ruth, an older woman I'd met in the hospital. Ruth was a retired head chef, and she'd taught me so much, not just about cooking techniques, but about the intention behind food. She'd also shared a story about a hidden cache in her old apartment, a secret that would later bring justice to her. Ruth had noticed something off about my condition. She saw that I didn't behave like someone at the end of life. Her years of experience in kitchens and hospitals gave her an intuition that the doctor's diagnosis might be wrong. She contacted an old acquaintance, a hematologist, who agreed to review my case. And he was right, the original diagnosis was incorrect. I had a treatable viral condition, not aggressive blood cancer. After my recovery, I met Samuel, Ruth's son, at a shelter kitchen. He was quiet and reserved, focused on his young daughter. His presence was a stark contrast to Brian's self-centeredness. Samuel's quiet responsibility and care for his daughter showed me the kind of strength and stability I'd always wanted. Back at the cafe, Brian's actions reached a boiling point. He planted a listening device in the back office, hoping to find evidence of my supposed hidden wealth. I knew his pattern well, so I staged a conversation about a large inheritance. He took the bait, arriving at the cafe unannounced, demanding explanations and accusing me of deceit. That day, the cafe was filled with customers, staff, and familiar faces. My mother-in-law, Margaret, was there, as was Allison. When Brian confronted me, the room fell silent. Margaret, who had always been a quiet observer, finally spoke up. She told Brian that he had chosen ambition over decency, and that he didn't deserve to be her son. She'd revised her will, redirecting her assets to Brian's child. Allison then stepped forward and placed a folder on the table, filled with evidence of Brian's financial irregularities. The look on his face was one of shock and defeat. Within weeks, the legal consequences unfolded. Brian was suspended, then dismissed from his job. Charges were brought against him, and his world came crashing down. But my story isn't just about Brian's downfall. It's about finding myself, about the power of choosing the right path. 15 years ago, I graduated at the top of my class. I had offers from large companies, but I chose to return to my hometown and work at a small bakery. My mother was disappointed, seeing it as a waste of my potential. But my father and grandparents supported me. They told me that a life lived with purpose carried dignity, no matter how small it seemed. I worked at the bakery for 15 years, starting at the bottom and gradually rising to a leadership role. I was dependable, never seeking attention, but always doing my best. That's where I met Brian. He was ambitious, always focused on his career. He proposed in a timely manner, as if it were part of his plan. Our marriage was a routine, but I soon realized that there was a growing distance between us. When I started feeling unwell, I didn't tell him at first. I tried to adjust on my own, but the symptoms grew worse. Finally, I went to the doctor, and that's when my world turned upside down. The initial diagnosis of cancer was a nightmare, and Brian's reaction was the ultimate betrayal. But through it all, I found strength in unexpected places. Ruth's teachings, Jacob's kindness, and Samuel's stability helped me rebuild my life. The cafe we opened together is a reflection of all of us, a place built on care, not ambition. As I stand here, watching the life I've built, I feel a sense of peace. I've learned that you're not defined by who abandons you at your weakest. Silence can be a form of power, and healing doesn't require revenge. It just takes clarity and courage. And looking back, I know that I made the right choices, even when they were the hardest ones.